Lorraine good?
Lorraine's fine.
Thank God.
Shelley's ready to be president, huh?
I don't know.
Shelley's coming.
She's working at it.
What are you working on? She's coming up.
Yeah, she's ready. I mean, she'll serve. She'll do a better job than me.
No.
See, when we were doing it, I don't know about you,
Yeah.
because I know you did it twice, but when we were doing it, we were young men working full time. You know? A little different gig when you're, you know.
We didn't come here and spend all day.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, I followed Lily, who was here every day, 8 hours a day. I said, first thing I did is I said, okay, you guys want to have a meeting? I can be here at 7:30, or I can be here at 6:30. Tell me when you want.
I said, if you want to have a luncheon meeting, I'll have a luncheon meeting.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's either before the day, why?
Everything okay? You guys have a great time? Weather was okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, Joanne said it got a little warmer.
But then, it didn't last long.
Yeah.
It was great, we had a good time. It's a wonderful, I don't know if you ever been there.
We have, yeah, we were in,
Just go away.
we went away, we were outside, Knoxville, right there, the mountain. Very nice. And then we're going to Connecticut, the middle of August for a long time.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, we're gonna be, watching our while our kids go to Europe. You know, it's a good deal. If you can get it.
God.
Chavez,
Good
you know?
morning. Yeah, let me have one.
You sure you need one?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Do we have a minion?
Maybe. Yeah, it looks like it.
What's your name again?
Boy, no Rahmanis here, huh?
Nah.
We were here.
Good, what'd you learn?
Can't remember.
All right.
We learned about
The spies? That's my bar mitzvah portion.
So while you were away, did you keep up with politics?
I tried not to, but yeah, of course. Alaska. Yeah, we went on a cruise. 16 of us. Family reunion.
Wow.
So it was very special.
That was good.
You're gonna leave from
Seattle.
Yeah.
I'd never been to Seattle.
Nice town.
Yeah. Little liberal for. I was just there. We went on a cruise to Alaska. We went out of Seattle.
Have you gone to Vancouver?
No, I'd never been there. I'd never been to Seattle. I'd never been to Alaska. But I had knocked off 2 states. So I'm almost to 40.
How many shows did they have in Alaska?
Not many. But we came back through Victoria, British Columbia, and they have and we did a Jewish tour there. We saw the shuls from from the 1800s. Yeah.
Did you go to Bouchard Garden?
Spectacular.
Yeah.
Oh,
We took my parents.
it's like the Nantucket of Canada. You know, I mean, it's spectacular.
Did you want to go whale watching?
Yeah. Sled dog riding, whale watching. So, and I'm gonna be gone another week because I'm going to Israel.
Why?
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 Why go to Israel?
You decided why to
Family members, you know, I'm scared.
Well, it depends where you are. But I was invited by the Israeli army to go for 4 days to go find out what's really going on. So we're going to meet with the generals, and they invited a handful of rabbis.
That is scary.
Well, on army bases, you're pretty safe. I mean, unless you're on the northern border, you're fine.
Well, now it's
So it looks like
now Hezbollah's shooting.
Yeah, but you can't even go there. It's all closed off. So,
when are you going?
20 9th.
Of what?
Yeah, it looks familiar. Shabbat shalom. Thank you. All right, let's get this show on the road.
Let's get rolling.
Good Shabbos. So,
Make the meeting.
okay. So, why is this? So let's assume that the masses thought I wasn't going to be in town, or either that or they're already in Aspen. So this is really loud. You hear that echo?
Feedback.
I turned it off.
Now that's power.
There it comes.
Put it back on.
Here, take it.
Let me turn that off. Let's see what happens. Oh, okay. There you go.
Is yours working?
Oh, there it goes again. So you know.
Away, worked well.
Yeah, I bet. I don't know what to do. It's going to keep. Yeah, if no one talks for an hour, we should be fine. All right. Let's see what happens. Here we go. Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasod et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasod et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam Beini uven v'nei Yisrael oti leolam oti leolam Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasod et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et ha-shamayim ve'et ha-aretz Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasod et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam Uvayom hashvi Shabbat vaynafash Shabbat vaynafash Shabbat vaynafash Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasod et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Boirei peri hagayfen Amen l'chaim. Okay. Blessing for Torah study. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivan L'asot b'divrei. Amen. Okay, Torah portion is called Chukat. And you're looking for the sheets? I only have one. There should be plenty. Yeah, I made Ian over here. Anyone else not have one? No? You need one? Ian, can you pass one to Beth? Okay, yeah, there's plenty. Okay, so chukat. I think we're good. All right. One more for Abe. Okay. Ready? All right. Chukat is a Torah portion. We know the word chukat. It comes from the word chuk, and we've talked about this many times. The difference between the two types of mitzvahs in the Torah, chuk and mishpat. Right? So, you could translate chuk, the normal translations will say laws and precepts, which a law is a law, and a precept is a golf ball. Right? So it's the name of a golf ball. Right? I don't know if they still make them. Yeah. Yeah. I used to use precepts when I was just starting to play golf because they were the cheapest ball that they sold in the golf store where I was learning how to play and where we used to lose a lot of golf balls. Anyway, there used to be a golf ball called precept. But that, if you ask someone in English what's the difference between a law and a precept, you're not going to get something midrashic. But if you try to figure out in the Torah why are there two types of mitzvahs, chok and mishpat, two words in Hebrew that generally mean the same thing, laws and laws, then you could figure out that there's a difference between the two. And we've talked about this a lot. Usually what we say is, a chok is a law that we don't know the reason why we have that law. Let me say that again. A chok is a mitzvah, one of the 613, and we don't know why to do it. A mishpat is a law that is obvious, that even the Jews at Mount Sinai said, even if you didn't give us those we would have done. But I heard a different understanding of what chok and mishpat is, because we know that chok, for every mitzvah that there is no reason, there's a reason. There is a reason. It's just the rationale is not explained in the Torah. And it's not obvious to the human mind. Do not kill. Okay. I mean, some people have a problem with that, but most people understand you shouldn't kill other people. But, so I heard one rabbi explain it this way. He said, if I put you in different rooms, each in a different room, and I said, write down some laws that you think that should be in the Torah. You'd go into your room and you'd have something similar. You'd write, if you didn't know anything about the Torah, if you never heard of the Torah, if you didn't even open it, and you said, well, what are the laws of morality you think God would ask us? Probably you would put, be kind, don't kill, don't steal. Okay. You might even put, don't lie in court. Okay. But, not in Miami, but in other places in the country. But nobody would put kosher. If you didn't know anything about the Torah, nobody would say kosher. Nobody would say the red heifer. Nobody would say corpse tuma. You would never come up with it. So now the Torah has told us that those are also mitzvot. Now we know what they are. But the Torah doesn't tell us what the rationale is. And the rabbis try. Even some of the prophets try. But we don't necessarily always come up with the answer. Now, milk and meat. Why not eat milk and meat? Okay, and so there's, it's cruel. Over time there's been different explanations. What does meat represent? Good. Yeah, meat represents death and milk represents life, and we don't mix life and death. They're two different forms of being. So don't eat milk and meat. So maybe now you won't eat your cheeseburgers. You probably still will, but whatever. You shouldn't. According to the Torah. Yeah, so there's also, that's a whole different, I have that class. That's a different class, but they're right, shotness. Nobody would say, oh yeah, don't kill, don't steal, don't wear two different types of fibers in the same coat. Everyone would have had that one. What? Okay, so chukat is the chok extraordinaire, the red heifer. Okay. So what I want to now look at is a few different midrashim that will help us come up with an idea of what this is really all about. So the first thing I want to say, though, today is that chok generally, or sometimes is defined as mitzvahs that have no reason. That's not a great definition. A better definition is mitzvahs that have a reason, but the rationale is not necessarily explained in the Torah. And for some of them, maybe we figured it out. Maybe we have theories. Maybe you know why God commanded us to keep kosher. Maybe you don't. Whatever. There's theories. We've had that class. We looked at some of the theories in Chazal, in the rabbi's literature. But can we say for sure? Not necessarily, because it's not in the Torah, and it's a chok. That's what a chok is. By the way, we do believe that when you die and go to heaven, all of these things will be explained to you. Once you get, so, you could say, finally I'm going to understand the red heifer. So, I don't think that anyone's going to say, maybe I don't want to live so long because I'm dying to know that. You'll figure it. It's just like a bonus. You'll figure it out, but don't go crazy.
A question.
Yeah, can you use the mic? Let me pass the mic. Can you pass? So they can hear you at home?
It's off.
Talk, yeah.
Yeah, you might have to flip it on the bottom. There should be a switch.
I know in our reading, we're going to come across a line that says, the Lord spoke to Moses and to Aaron. Can you explain to us exactly what that means when the Lord spoke to Moses? How did that occur? How does does he hear it? Does he feel it? Does he see it?
It's an interesting question. Well, look, whenever God spoke to anyone, it was through visions and dreams. Always. Except Moses. How do we know that? Because the Torah tells us. At the end of the Torah, Moses is the only one who spoke to God face to face. So Moses spoke to God in real time. So what's interesting about the question is if God spoke to Moses and Aaron at the same time and Moses was able to understand it face to face, but Aaron wasn't, how did he speak to both of them at the same time? So, yeah, it's kind of like if you're in a room with someone and you're both looking at the computer and you're Zooming with someone else who's like far away, and there's like a delay. The person hears you in real time, and the other guy, there's like a delay. So Moses was standing there like, oh, yeah. And then Aaron, a few seconds later, would be like, oh, yeah. Huh? Yeah. Huh? I don't know exactly how that happened. But what I know is that Moses heard it in real time, and Aaron only heard it in a vision or a dream of some sort. Maimonides explains all of that in the Guide for the Perplexed. If I could show you where to read more about it. Use the mic. One of these days we'll get you your own mic. That day is not yet.
I don't really know that it's that important anymore. But couldn't it simply be that whatever God wanted to happen would happen? He just wanted Aaron to be able to hear it the way Moses heard it, and they both heard it in that moment because that's the way God was communicating with them both.
Yeah, the difference is that Aaron didn't have the intellectual capacity that Moses did to be able to handle it in real time.
But God gave it to him in that moment. Why not?
Because nobody had it except for Moses.
Okay.
It doesn't matter.
Thank you.
It doesn't matter. They both heard it. It's just the point is they communicated with God differently. And what we learn from that is that Moses was on a different plane of intellect than all the other prophets. So, but they still got the message. Okay. We have a few minutes left. I prepared some things. So, okay, Ed, would you mind taking us? We're in Chukat, Numbers chapter 19, verse 1. Numbers 19, verse 1.
The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron.
Ed, can you use the mic? That way we'll get the feedback. Yeah.
The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, "This is the ritual law that the Lord has commanded. Instruct
We could go on and on about the procedure for what's called the para aduma, the red heifer. And the idea is that if someone has corpse tuma, right, you've become impure because you've come into contact in all the different ways you can come into contact with a dead body, then you're impure, and the only way to become purified from that is to do this procedure with a red heifer, which ultimately results in mixing the ashes of the burnt red heifer and immersing with water that it's been combined with. Okay, well, obviously we don't do that anymore. So anyone who has ever been to a cemetery, we've been through this many times, is impure. Okay, and that's just what it is. And when the Messiah comes, if you're a priest and the temple's rebuilt and you've been in a cemetery, you're not going to be allowed into the new holy temple to go and do the work that needs to be done until they get a red heifer and so forth. So that's a problem, but we're trying to overcome it. Is it the biggest problem we have in the world today? It's like second. It's like second. All right. Now, if I asked you what we just read, what Ed just read, without looking back at it, there are a handful of words that are repeated over and over. Okay? If you look at the first source, Numbers 19:2, Numbers Rabbah 19:2, the first midrash. Basically, I want to share 3 midrashim with you. They all come from what's called Pisgah, number 19, 2, 5, and 7. So the first one, number 2, Ed, would you mind reading there? Rabbi Hanan ben Pazi.
Rabbi Hanan ben Pazi interpreted the verse regarding the portion of the heifer in which there are 7 of everything. 7 heifers, 7 burnings, 7 sprinklings, 7 immersions, 7 impure, 7 pure, 7 priests.
Okay, now so all these words are mentioned 7 times. That's interesting, right? You could go, if you don't believe me, you can go and count it. And you'll see heifers, the paraduma, the burnings, the sreifa, the sprinklings, which are the hazia, and what else? The immersions, right? The tvila, and tahor and tameh, and then 7 priests. So now if you looked closely, you'd say, well, wait a minute, there's only 5. But the midrash is ready for you. If a person will say to you, there are 5, say to him, oh, you didn't count Moses and Aaron. Because it mentioned 5 times the word priests. But it also mentions, actually as Jay pointed out, Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe Aaron, God spoke to Moses and Aaron. So if you can do this kind of math in your head, 5 priests plus Moses and Aaron comes out to 7. Now you could ask the good question, was Moses a priest? Because we know Aaron was the high priest. But then you could ask the question, well, who appointed him high priest? Only a priest could appoint a priest. And who appointed him? Moses. So Moses was a high priest just for the moment. God made him the high priest. God appointed Moses high priest until he appointed Aaron high priest. And then he said to Moses, you're not the high priest anymore, he is. So Moses was a high priest for a moment. Right? But so if you count those 2, you have 5 plus 2 is 7. So there's a mystery there. The mystery that the Midrash is pointing out is that there's something interesting about 7. So 7 generally represents, in Jewish thought, teva. You know what a teva is? A sandal? Tiva. But what does the word teva mean in Hebrew? Natural. It means the natural order of the world, creation. Why? Because the world was created in 7 days. So everything that's in the world as we know it is 7, including Shabbat. 7. The number 8 refers to what's beyond teva. What's beyond the natural understanding of the universe. And what here is beyond the natural understanding of the universe? Chok. Right? Mishpat is that word, mitzvahs we understand, that makes sense to the human mind. Mishpat, those are 1 through 7. But this, so we have those 7. But this Torah portion is called Chukat. So Chukat is what's beyond the 7. So what I just showed you is a mystery that's hidden like a code. Where's my paper? A code that the Midrash points out is hidden in the Torah. That's why all these things are mentioned 7 times, to show you that usually mitzvahs are natural and you should understand them. But this is that one Torah portion called Chukat that goes beyond natural understanding. It's cool, right? Okay, it gets better. It gets better. Next Midrash. Let's see. Annabella, would you mind reading Numbers Rabbah 19:5? Rabbi Yoshua of Sichnin. Sichnin is actually an Arab town today called Sichnin. You know, there's a soccer team called Bnei Sichnin. Anyone ever heard of it? They're what? Sachnin, Sichnin. Same spelling. So this place, it's an Arab team. It's made up of all Arabs. But they have a good team. And they play in the top league in Israel. And many years ago, something very interesting happened. They played against the Jerusalem team, Beitar Yerushalayim. And their best player, who is Arab, scored a goal. And in Jerusalem, in the stadium, they booed him unmercilessly. And it was racist. And their Beitar Jerusalem fans are known for being racist. They admit it. They call themselves La Familia. There's actually I don't know if it's still on Netflix or one of them. There's a documentary about them. They're not the best of what Israel has to offer. They're soccer hooligans, basically, and they're racist. And they booed this guy like crazy. But this guy's a great player. And he made the Israel national team. And 3 or 4 days later, in that same stadium, Israel played another country. And he scored a goal for Israel. And the same people who were booing him were now cheering him. And it caused Israelis to look in the mirror. And it became this whole very interesting thing. So, but not only did that happen in Sachnin, but Rabbi Yehoshua was from Sachnin. This is the kind of stuff you're not going to get in Boca. This is deep level information. Okay, so here we go. Annabelle.
Rabbi Yoshua of Sichnin said in the name of Rabbi Levi, there are 4 matters that the evil inclination decries, as the statute is written in their regard: a brother's wife, mixed species, the scapegoat, and the red heifer. A brother's wife, as it is written, the nakedness of your brother's wife you shall not uncover. Leviticus 18:16.
The beginning, there are 4 matters that the evil inclination decries. You know, evil inclination in Hebrew is Yetzer Hara, right? You know the Yetzer Hara? So there are 4 mitzvahs where the Yetzer Hara tries to mess with you. And these are those mitzvahs. So what do all of these mitzvahs have in common? They're contradictory. You can have relations with your brother's wife if he has no children. But if he has children, what? Right. You can wear a garment. You can't wear a garment of shatnez that mixes fibers of two different types of linen and cloth. But if it has tzitzit on it, then you can. What? The red heifer. The people who sacrifice it and who slaughter it become impure by touching it. But the impure person who has it dumped on his head, who's impure, now becomes pure. It makes tameh what is tahor, and makes tahor what is tameh. It makes pure what is impure, and it makes impure what is pure. And you look at it and say, that makes no sense. And so the Yetzer Hara comes to you Jews, right, to us Jews, and says, your laws are stupid. Why should you follow them? What does it matter if you put cheese on this burger or not? What's the difference? Does God care? We did that class, remember? It's not if God cares, it's if you care. That's a different class. But the Yetzer Hara comes to the Jew and says, you have these mitzvahs that defy rationality. And so maybe you shouldn't do them. And then the Jew says, I'm okay with the tzedakah. I'm okay with the do not kill. But this is ridiculous. Well, it makes no sense. Why should I do this? And then you start to think that. So Rabbi Yehoshua would say that's the Yetzer Hara messing with you. And he's got good reason to, because to the rational human mind, this makes no sense. Okay, so it's a very interesting midrash, and the reason it's brought here is because the red heifer is the par excellence mitzvah that we really have no understanding. Now, do you know who famously tried to figure out all of the meanings for all of the chukim? And tried to work out through his wisdom what each of the different chukim, chok plural is chukim. The O turns to U. Chok, chukim. Who tried to figure out what the rationale was for all of them? No? Go back even further. A guy even smarter than those two. King Solomon, right, is known for his wisdom. Why was he smarter than them? Because he was a prophet. How do you know he's a prophet? Because he wrote books of the Bible. One of the books that he wrote was Ecclesiastes, which in Hebrew is called Mishlei. So if you look at the bottom of the page, here's a verse that King Solomon, according to tradition, wrote in Mishlei. Right? Mishlei in English is Ecclesiastes. So look what he says. All this I tested with wisdom. I thought I could fathom it, but it eludes me. In other words, what King Solomon said was, I looked through all of the wisdom of the world that I could gather, and I found the reason for all of the different chukim, with the exception of this one. And if you look on the next page, Rashi tells you which one is he talking about. To know and search out and to seek the wisdom or the meaning of the section dealing with the para aduma, the red heifer. So even King Solomon's not saying to you there's no reason for the red heifer. He's saying I just couldn't figure it out. I figured out all the other ones, or at least I think I've worked out in my mind what I think all the other ones are. I can give you a whole lecture on why you should keep kosher. I can talk to you about the shatnez and the fringes on your garments. But if you ask me about the red heifer, I just can't figure it out. This one's really tough. And King Solomon, right, known for his wisdom. Okay. Question? Yes. Okay, so a red heifer, the Gemara talks about, right, the Gemara, the second part of the Talmud, talks about what's the red heifer. And basically it's a cow that has red skin. Now, we don't have these anymore. Every once in a while, there'll be like a sick cow in Iowa. and some farmer will alert his pastor, who will alert the Associated Press that God has blessed us with a red heifer. And we tell them we don't think so. We don't, because they don't exist anymore. And they won't exist until the temple's rebuilt. But even in the times of the Holy Temple, they didn't grow on trees. And the Talmud lists all the times they actually found one. And I think they only found like 7 ever. It's not like they were all over the place. The Talmud actually tells you which ones they found. Like they said, we found one in the days of this king, and we found one in the days of this king, and we found one in the days of this prophet. And I don't remember exactly how, I think it was 7, may have been more, but it tells you every time they found one. We haven't found one since. Other than, what you might find in Iowa or, Dubuque. They seem to, so where do they generally pop up? Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Shechem, Dubuque, Waco. Yeah. Okay. Now, one more midrash, number 7. Joe, would you mind reading that one? 19:7.
Numbers, Rabbi 19:7. Rabbi Aha, really? Said in the name of Rabbi Hanina.
Yeah, by the way, you know what his name is in Greek? Rabbi Aha. You know what they call him in Greek? Rabbi Eureka. Aha. That's his Greek name.
This stuff's pretty good, folks.
Yeah. Again, you're not going to get this in.
Yeah.
You used to be able to get it in Fort Myers, but you're not going to get too many other places.
Definitely not Boca. When Moses ascended on high, he heard the voice of the Holy One, blessed be he, who was sitting and engaging in a portion of the red heifer and saying the halakha in the name of the one who said it. Rabbi Eliezer says.
Okay, no, wait. Before we move on, think about how absurd that statement is that you just read. Moses went on high and he saw God. What was God doing? Studying Torah. So God himself is saying, I don't even get this red heifer thing. Have you ever I don't know, maybe you wrote something and later you come back to it and you say, what was I thinking when I wrote this? So God was having one of those moments. And look what he's done. He's sitting and engaging in the portion of the red heifer and saying, what is the law? So I said, ultimately, what's the law? In other words, how old does the red heifer need to be sacrificed? And who was the rabbi in the Mishnaic period? So in about another 1,500 years after Moses lived, who's the rabbi who, what we say is paskind, right? Who made the legal decision, the authoritative legal decision on what to do. So God's looking at that and reading it. So it's a pretty amazing sight for Moses to see. You go up there, what do you think God's doing? Is he playing video games? Yeah, he could be doing anything. He's studying Torah. Okay, let's keep going.
Rabbi Eliezer says, a calf within its first year, a heifer within its second year, he said before him, Master of the universe, may it be your will that he be from my descendants. He said to him, as you live, he is from your descendants. That is what is written. And the name of one, Eliezer, Exodus 18:4, the name of that special one.
Okay, so a lot just happened in this midrash. This is a great midrash. So what Moses sees God studying, and he sees that God quotes Rabbi Eliezer, and Moses says, Moses recognizes this guy Rabbi Eliezer is not even born yet. If he was, I would know who he is. If you had someone who was this great a Torah scholar, I would have heard of him. So it's clear that God's looking into the future. And he says, wow, God, I have a request. Can you make it so that this genius, Rabbi Eliezer, should descend from me? And God says he's going to. And Rabbi Eliezer becomes one of the most famous rabbis of the Mishnah. And who was his teacher? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, right? The man who basically saved Judaism. He was the one who was smuggled out of of Jerusalem in a coffin, and then he met with Vespasian and convinced them to allow the Jews to write the Mishnah. And Rabbi Eliezer was the great student of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, and a direct descendant of Moses. Now, right after this, we see, after this event, Moses, we see something that already happened. Moses has a son with the same name, Eliezer. And the Torah this Midrash quoted it. If you look back and say Exodus 18:4, it says, and the name of that one, Eliezer. But Moses' son, nothing ever becomes of him. And what the Midrash is saying is, when the Torah said there's going to be this great Eliezer in 18:4 in Exodus, it wasn't referring to his son Eliezer, it was referring to his later descendant from the Mishnah, Rabbi Eliezer, which is pretty incredible. Eliezer means Eli, right? My God, Ezer is my help, right? Because without God's help, you can't understand the chukim. You can't understand the mitzvahs. By the way, there's only one person. There's another midrash, I didn't bring it, that says God did explain the rationale of the red heifer to Moses, but to nobody else, and he wouldn't allow Moses to share it with anyone else. Why? Because otherwise, people like me on days like this would have nothing to talk about. I mean, how long can you talk about the red heifer year after year? So I could say, here's what God said to Moses, here's what it means. Okay, now we have 50 minutes. Hopefully there's some bagels left. Right? Okay. So that's what we have so far. We have a lot so far. Now, what's so special about Rabbi Eliezer? There are a lot of tales about him throughout the Talmud. Some of the most famous ones. But there's a quality about him that's very much like Moses. And in order to understand that quality, we need a story from the Talmud. So if you look on the next page, there's a story from the tractate of Sukkot, which is called Sukkah, on page 28a. There's a little story about Rabbi Eliezer that gives us some insight into his character. And we need to know it in order to understand what's going on here. So, Shelley, would you mind? This is Bavli Sukkah 28a.
The Gemara relates a similar incident. The sages taught there was an incident involving Rabbi Eliezer who stayed in the Upper Galilee, and the people there asked him 30 halachot in the halachot of Sukkah. In response to 12, he said to them, I heard an answer from my teachers, and he related what he heard. In response to the other 18, he said to them, I did not hear an answer. Rabbi Yosef, son of Rabbi Yehuda, says, it was the reverse of these matters. In response to 18, he said to them, I heard an answer. In response to the other 12, he said to them, I did not hear an answer.
Yeah.
Clear as mud.
By the way, you look at places like the Upper Galilee, by the way, we've been there for a long time. Just by the way. The Upper Galilee, right, which is not safe to be in right now. But we Jews have been there for a long time. Right? Okay, so let's look at this. The sages taught there was an incident involving Rabbi Eliezer, and the people came to ask him 30 halachot about Sukkot. Right? Is my sukkah too big? How high can it be? Whatever. They had a lot of questions about building their sukkah. Does this lulav look kosher to you? And so forth. Does this etrog look kosher to you? You ever hear Alan Gold do his routine about why Jews don't have Christmas trees? Oh, it's genius. He said, if Jews had Christmas trees, and you brought a Christmas tree in your house, Is this tree too tall? Is it cut from the ground in the right way? It's kosher if it extends into the living room, but if it then goes into the kitchen and it gets touched by this, then it's not kosher and you can't use it. And if this guy cut it and that guy cut it, but both guys cut it and she touched it, and he goes on and on about if it would be kosher. And so finally the Jew said, you know what, maybe we're not going to do the tree. We have enough problems with the lulav. All right, if you don't like halacha, then that's not funny. But if you do, then and also when he does it, apparently it's a lot funnier. Okay. So, yeah, boy. I don't know. You Google Alon Gold, E-L-O-N, or YouTube, Alon Gold and his Christmas tree routine. And it's very funny. And you'll watch it, and then you'll say, oh, that's what he meant. All right. Hopefully we're going to get him at the hub someday. Then you can hear the same stuff. He'll say the exact same thing as I did, only then you'll laugh because you paid for it. All right. So he says, in response to 12 questions he said to them, I heard an answer from my teachers, and he related what he heard. Okay, so Rabbi Eliezer, what he was known for was only saying what he learned from his rabbi. If he didn't learn it from Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, he would not teach it. He didn't make anything up. He only passed on the tradition. He's a descendant of Moses. That's all Moses did. If Moses didn't know the answer to something, he asked God. They said, Moses, this guy's been gathering wood on Shabbat. What are we supposed to do with him? I don't know. Let me ask God. God, what do we do? Kill him. Okay, kill him. But he never, if he didn't know the answer directly from God, he wouldn't pass it on. So Moses represents a pure, unadulterated filter of Torah. And anyone who descends from Moses, that's what they represent. So Rabbi Eliezer would not be willing to tell you the answer unless he heard it directly from Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who he trusted as his teacher. So now look, there are other questions. In response to the other 18 questions, he said, I did not hear an answer. It was, okay, so because he didn't have an answer, he said, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai never told me that. I can't tell you anything. That's who he was. He was continuing. So when God saw Rabbi Eliezer was the one who was saying, this is the law about the red heifer, God said, yes, that's what I agree with. Because that's the pure, unadulterated line of Torah. And by the way, it's gotten very messy. And that's what the Talmud is. The Talmud is this rabbi says this, and that rabbi says that. But if every rabbi passed it down unfiltered, we wouldn't have these problems. But things got lost and changed along the way, and now we have what is the worst thing you could have, doubt. And we have, even doubt about the red heifer. By the way, there's a very interesting gematria that's worked out from that verse in Mishlei, where the Hebrew is, gematria is the numerical value of a number. The Hebrew is V'hi rechoka mimeni. King Solomon says, it's distant from me. I have never been able to work out the idea of the red heifer. This mitzvah I've never been able to figure out. And who was the rabbi who found it? It was the Rokeach. There's a rabbi named the Rokeach who lived about 600 years. I think when did he live? I forget. Sometime in the Middle Ages. But the Rokeach said, if you add up the Hebrew letters of that phrase, it is distant from me, v'chi rechoka mimeni, and you add up the letters of the two words para aduma, the red heifer, they're equal. It's pretty cool. So, okay. Now, everything I've told you is pure, unadulterated stuff I've taken from other rabbis. And now I'm going to give you something that I think, and that's where we usually get thrown off the tracks. Well, you're not supposed to agree with me. It's like, yeah, oh God, this is usually when I walk out. Right. Okay, so the Reform movement began in America in the mid-1880s with a statement, which was called the Pittsburgh Platform, which basically gave Jews and Reform Jews the license to do whatever you wanted. Before the Pittsburgh Platform, you couldn't eat cheeseburgers. After the Pittsburgh Platform, you could have shrimp in the shul. You know, it basically said, I mean, they were probably doing that anyway, but it basically said, here's what we believe. And a lot of the mitzvahs that don't make sense to us anymore, we're not going to do them anymore. I grew up in a pretty traditional home, but, my parents aren't as traditional as they used to be. So, if we go out to eat, maybe they don't keep kosher, whereas we always were, or we kept kosher in the home, and my dad would say, Pittsburgh Platform. Even though he grew up, denigrating the Reform movement. But, grew up the son of a very, very traditional rabbi. So, and the Reform movement was a lot different back then, in the 60s and 70s. It was much, much, much different. Okay, but so look what the Pittsburgh Platform in 1885 says. Scott, would you mind reading? This is principle number 3 of the original platform of the Reform movement in America.
We recognize in Mosaic legislation a system of training Jewish people for its mission during its national life in Palestine. And today we accept it binding only its moral laws and maintain only such ceremonies as elevate and sanctify our laws, but reject our lives, but reject
Take it easy on them.
such are not adapted to the views and habits of modern civilization.
Okay. What do you think the Pittsburgh Platform in article number 3 was saying about chok?
Ignore it.
Doesn't resonate with us. Who needs it? Get rid of it. And we did. And that became the Reform movement. But for the last 100 years, there have been groups like this meeting, Reform groups of Jews, and studying Torah, and going through it, and going through it, and going through it. And the Reform movement continued to reform. By the way, that's why we get upset when people call us reformed. We're not reformed. We're not the Reformed movement. We're reform, which gives us the license to continue to evolve. If you say we were reformed, we changed once and we're not going to change again. We don't agree with that.
The reforming.
Yeah. But it's not a past tense, we did it and we're not going to do it again. We change all the time. There have been some changes that have come up lately that I'm very much against, that I've been voting against and getting voted, losing 17-1 at every CCR board meeting. But whatever, I continue to show up. Something to do. But by 1999, look at this, 1999, the last time the Reform movement came up with a platform. Notice what city they did it in. Pittsburgh. On purpose. We went back and we said, Pittsburgh Platform 1885, we've had some time to think about it. So look what they wrote in 1999. Sherry, would you mind reading the... and by the way, you see, there are a lot of things to notice here. But notice the date. May 1999, Sivan 5759. There's no Hebrew date in the first one. They weren't interested in that. They weren't interested in Hebrew. If you ever remember the old Union prayer book, not a lot of Hebrew, right? By 1999, we have a different take on Jewish tradition and Hebrew. Okay? Now, this is already, I was in rabbinic school when this came out. I started rabbinic school I graduated from college in 97. I started rabbinic school in the summer of 97 in Israel. And so by 1999, I was in my my third year of rabbinic school in Cincinnati. And, I guess I was still in my second year. And it was big news. And, the professors hated it. The professors hated it because it was being done by pulpit rabbis. And professors think that pulpit rabbis are idiots because we're not as brilliant as they are. Then sometimes they try becoming pulpit rabbis and it doesn't go very well. And then they have like more of a modicum of respect for, no, I don't know. But they used to call, I remember this clearly, the professors used to call the rabbis who were writing the principles, Chelm. You know, anyone know what Chelm is? It's like these Jewish myths about, you know, I don't know how you would say it, like morons, basically. You know, there are all these Chelm stories where you'd have two guys selling wine and they can't believe they're not making any money. So one guy's selling wine at his stand, the other guy's selling wine at his stand, and the guy says, I can't believe I haven't sold a bite. He says, you know what? I feel bad for you, I'll buy a glass of wine. He takes a coin and he gives it to him. I feel bad for you. I'm going to buy some of your wine. He gives the coin to him and takes some wine. It's nice of you. I like your wine, I'll have one more. By the end of the day, with the same coin, they drank all each other's wine. That's Chelm. There are a lot of stories like that. That's the only one I can remember. All right, but let's go back to the original point. By the way, a lot of temple boards still have the same logic. Not so much here. Look how they've changed their view from 1885. Okay, so here's the 1999.
We are called by Torah to lifelong study in the home, in the synagogue, and in every place where Jews gather to learn and teach. Through Torah study, we call to mitzvot, the means by which we make our lives holy. We are committed to the ongoing study of the whole array of mitzvot and to the fulfillment of those that address us as individuals and as a community. Some of these mitzvot's sacred obligations have long been observed by Reform Jews. Others, both ancient and modern, demand renewed attention as a result of the unique context of our own time.
Okay, so, what really jumps out to me here is, just for the purposes, we could take this in a million directions, we could have a whole conversation on this, but when we say the whole array of mitzvot, what we're saying is even the ones that we dismissed and we thought made no sense, and the Yetzer Hara got us to say these are stupid, we don't need them anymore, you know what? We've been thinking about it for 100 years and we don't agree with that anymore. So here's what I think, and you can take it or leave it. But for Reform Jews who take Torah seriously and who are committed to a liberal way of approaching the Torah, we're also saying that at some point, wherever that point is, if it's going to be our religion, this isn't our scientific study. If this is going to be our religion, then there's got to be at some point a recognition that there's an intellect in the world that's beyond what we can understand. And there's a design to the world that's beyond what we could understand. And for a while, we said in the 1880s, it just doesn't make sense anymore. We've entered now this, what they called Wissenschaft des Judentums, which was the scientific study of Judaism. And this was for the first time that ever happened, beginning in the very late 1700s, with the first seeds of Leopold Zunz and Moses Mendelssohn and all these other guys. But then moving on and growing into a whole idea of liberalism with regard to understanding the Torah. And people said, maybe we were wrong. Maybe modernity sheds light on the weaknesses of the Torah. Okay, so fine. So that gave birth to our movement, and we needed that. We couldn't be where we are today if we didn't have that where we were then. Rabbi Baumgart and I are very different rabbis in terms of ritual and understanding of Torah. We probably wouldn't agree on anything, ritually, or very little. But I couldn't be here as rabbi if he wasn't here as rabbi. If he didn't pave the way for people like me, I wouldn't have been able to be out of an Orthodox box. But because they opened the door and paved the way, it allowed people like me to live in a reform world. And that's where we are, to be honest, I'm pretty mainstream reform. Maybe not in my views on Israel, but, I'm maybe right of center, but, I'm pretty mainstream reformed. My practice is not a lot different than a lot of Reform rabbis. So what we've ultimately said is we don't want this to just be a rational understanding of faith. We, in 1999 at least, where the rabbis, the pulpit rabbis of America thought the Reform movement were, and where I still think it is we're a group of people who want to go beyond a rational understanding of faith and to have a deeper connection with something divine. But in order to do that, we have to understand that there are things that God wants us to do that have a reason, but are potentially beyond our intellect. And even though we have the right and probably the mandate to try to figure out what those mitzvot mean, we have to admit that at some point there's a divide between us and God that will not get bridged until we reach the next world. And when we do, those things will be made holy. So what I think we're saying here is the Declaration of Principles in 1999 was the Reform's recognition that there are different types of mitzvot, and there are some that God gave us that have a reason, but the rationale is not explained in the Torah for the very simple reason that even if it was, we wouldn't understand it. And the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, has license to try to tempt us away from that understanding. And it's constantly there. And perhaps some of the reasons that the mitzvahs are contradictory are so that God can test us to see how we're going to deal with the Yetzer Hara. That may be part of it, but it's not the final answer. The final answer is the reason some of the mitzvot seem contradictory is because the human mind doesn't have the capability to grasp it. And so somewhere in our continual search, I want to say this slowly because I think it's profound, and then I'll conclude with this, but somewhere in our search for the unattainable is where our faith lies. And that's where we find religion today. Okay. Shabbat Shalom.
Walking back.
Good morning, everyone. We're having a luncheon today after Minyan. It would be wonderful if you could join us. And for those of you who have brought something to share, it's going to be in the room across the hall to the left. There are tables in there. You can put whatever you brought.